Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. On today's episode, UFC 300, we have ourselves a main event. Ilia Topuria is the new UFC featherweight champion, and PFL champs will clash with Bellator champs this weekend. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. SBC creator goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He's in Las Vegas. Matt Wells from the editorial side. He drops in. He's repping Dallas, Texas. And after a week of covering UFC 298 by going back to Cali. Did you really think Mike Bond wouldn't join us from Canada? I don't think so. No copies on the ones and twos. But before we get started, if you would kindly hit that like button right now, I'd greatly appreciate it. Hey, I just gave you some LL Cool J. Hit the like, please. Come on. Good. All right. UFC 300 has a main event, guys. Alex Fajeda will defend his light heavyweight title versus Jamal Hill after weeks, months of speculation, rumors, predictions. I got to admit, I did not see this one coming. And on paper, the fight is banging. I mean, who doesn't like themselves some Fajeda versus Hill, right? But this is UFC 300. The expectations were high. Is this the main event that put the UFC over the top? Put UFC 300 over the top, I should say. Let's unpack it. Are you satisfied, guys? Yay or nay? Mike Bond, hit it.
I don't want to be too harsh here. I know the UFC tried to explore a lot of avenues to find a main event for this card. They made a lot of calls, put a lot of money on the table to a lot of different people. And I think when this came in, I mean, the one thing that I guess was upside was like, it was a surprise. I don't think anyone really thought this fight was going to be on this card. Maybe they thought Alex Pereira would be on this card against someone else in Israel Adesanya or something like that. But we just didn't think Jamal Hill was going to be healthy enough. I mean, this seems like a pretty outrageous turnaround for him after rupturing his Achilles in August. So for him to come in here, I mean, those were the biggest question marks. So we didn't really see that coming. And then you hear from these guys. We both heard them do like small bits of media since this. Jamal Hill said he didn't get the call for it until a day before it was announced on the night of UFC 298. And Alex Pereira said they basically were trying to get him to fight at UFC 301 on May 4th and decided to move this fight up to 300. So this was planned, I don't know, D, E, F. I don't even know where it falls down. They really had to scramble to make this. It's a good fight on paper, but this is one that you would just think would be kind of a normal pay-per-view headliner, right? The UFC 301 main event. It doesn't really feel like a mega fight, something out of the norm, extremely unique. This is the right next fight to make at light heavyweight. And in that sense, it's a good fight and a good main event. But yeah, on its own, it doesn't feel like a special UFC 300 headliner. But you look at the card as a whole, like I am satisfied. It's a great fight card. I mean, I think you have now like 12 current or former UFC champions fighting at UFC 300. So it's steep, it's good, but they just didn't get that big main event, something that's going to blow your socks off like Dana White was kind of teasing for a while there. In that sense, it's going to be a letdown. I think anything would have been a bit of a letdown. I mean, I know they really wanted Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis. They put a ton of money out to both those guys. Israel Adesanya was ready from everything I heard, and it kind of fell apart on Dricus' side because he was still a little banged up. I think that would have been satisfactory as well, but yeah, we weren't getting Conor McGregor. We weren't getting John Jones. We weren't getting a George St. Pierre or Habib comeback or anything like that. So given who was available, what they could do, this was, I guess, best case. But yeah, this was a scramble, and it's just crazy to kind of think about because Dana White was first asked about UFC 300 like 14, 15 months ago. And the fact that it came this close down to the wire for them to figure out their main event is just kind of wild. But that's what happens when you're the UFC and you kind of live month to month off trying to build these cards and just throwing in whoever makes sense timing wise. So it is what it is now.
Mike, I know your socks weren't blown off, but is it more because it was like an option EDG, who knows what? Or is it more on the side of maybe Hill it feels like he's being rushed? And maybe we know when it looked like when they went to Jones, he said, no, I'm not ready. You know what I mean? Like you got to appreciate someone when they're not ready versus, I don't know, if it's taking the money or succumbing to the pressure and going before they may be ready. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I guess Jamal would have to answer where he is physically at this point. If you're him, right? Like they said, the moment he relinquished the title, his next fight, he was going to get the pay-per-view points and he was going to be treated as a champion coming in. And even if he's got to push it a little bit for him to decline this opportunity to get a cut of the pay-per-view for UFC 300, who knows what like he thinks about the long-term stability of that leg and fighting off that Achilles. And if he's going in there being like, this is a big payday, I got to take this opportunity, then more power to him. I understand. I just hope he's not going in there a significantly lesser version of himself and rushing it too much, because how unfortunate would it be if we get to this UFC 300 main event and it ends prematurely because he re-injures himself or something happens like that, and obviously God forbid he can't even make it to the fight and something pops up in camp. So this definitely felt like a risky scenario. It seems like everyone involved is kind of pushing it. The only person I'm not really surprised by being in the spot is Alex Pereira, because we know that dude will fight anyone, anywhere. And he's already saying he wants to make a 21-day turnaround and fight in Brazil at UFC 301 too. So we know this guy's a fighter, to his deepest core. And these type of opportunities, shorter notice fights aren't a surprise to him. So his placement there, I'm not surprised in, but Jamal Hill, I'm definitely a little concerned until, he gives us some reassurance otherwise.
All right, Matt Wells, good to have you back after a few weeks. Let's hear your thoughts, man. Did it satisfy you when you heard it and we all felt like we got hit from left field? What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of break the fourth wall here, on the back end here at Junkie, like we try to prepare for these things, right? And I'll say this one was a curveball for us, but like if you were going to give me a slow reveal of the main event, right? Like if the announcement was a slow reveal, if you say UFC 300 main event, Alex Pereira versus, and then do the slow drum roll, you're sitting there say Izzy, say Izzy, say Izzy, say Izzy, Jamal Hill, and then the Price is Right, loser sound plays. It's like it's a solid fight. Like Mike said, it's a great main event for any other pay-per-view, but for UFC 300, given the way that the promotion tried to sell it, the way Dana tried to sell it, like it's going to be this big blockbuster main event. It's going to, blow the doors off of everything. Didn't end up being that. I mean, it's a solid fight. Don't get me wrong. I think Jamal Hill is going to bring, with the caveat, if he's healthy, if he's fully healthy, he's going to bring a hell of a fight for Alex Pereira. It's a fantastic fight on paper, but, I don't think it's that big blockbuster fight that everybody was looking for. And unfortunately, that's going to sour some fans away, because the way Dana tried to sell this thing is that this is going to be like the biggest card ever in the history of the UFC. I don't think we've gotten that. But what we do have is a fantastic main event, a fantastic card top to bottom. It's probably going to be one of the best lineups that we see this entire year. But because of the way that they tried to sell it to us as it's going to be this big blockbuster thing, Conor, we didn't get Conor, we didn't get, any of these big superstars. Like it's going to sour some people away, unfortunately. But in reality, what we have is a fantastic card top to bottom. So we shouldn't really be complaining about anything. Like I said, it's going to be one of the best fight cards of the entire year. I do have a question about, why did they choose Alex on this card when you've got the Brazil event right afterwards? Like Mike mentioned, he said he's willing to turn around. So if he can go out there and spark Jamal Hill, hey, maybe we'll see him main event that card too. But top to bottom, man, I think it's a fantastic card. Just not that big cherry on top that a lot of people were really expecting for a milestone event like UFC 300.
Matt, who's more wrong in the end? The UFC for hyping it up so much that we are left with this feeling, a little deflated, or the fans for holding the UFC to that and just not appreciating that it's a pretty solid card, and that main event, man, I just don't see how it's not going to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a fantastic card, but I mean, you got to kind of place the blame on both, I think, right? For Dana for saying, like, we're going to give you this, like, for teasing it for months and months and months. Like, it's going to be this huge fight. It's going to be this huge fight. What we end up getting is a fantastic fight. It's just not that big blockbuster type of fight, right? If it was Alex versus Izzy, I think that would fit that bill more, because Izzy's going up to light heavyweight. They have this incredible history between each other, wins and losses on both sides. That would fit that bill more. But now we kind of get like, oh, Jamal Hill's coming back from injury. What is he going to look like? There's more questions there, I think, than more excitement for that matchup.
And Hill sparks fools, you know what I mean?
Does.
So, like, we got to give him his due. It's almost like we do appreciate that he's coming back. It'll be about 9 months, which if you follow other sports, that's about the right time. Usually 9 months to a year, somewhere in there. But this is also a different other sport. You're not like a DB trying to cover, some of these awesome wide receivers that run 4.3s. So I don't know. All right, Gus, how about you, man? What was your reaction? We're doing the watch along, and I remember a little bit of it. And now that it's kind of sat, for the last 36 hours, what are your thoughts?
Well, to kind of answer the question that you posed to Matt, George, I'm gonna put it to you this way. If I promised you steak and you sat there waiting for a steak all day, and I showed up with a really good hamburger, you're gonna have a smile on your face, but it ain't gonna be that same feeling, right? That you were expecting that steak. That's kind of what happened here. Look, this is a great fight. There's no doubt about that. All right. Was it what we were expecting? No. I was one of those few people that kind of said, just leave it as it is. Like, it's not that they didn't try. You have to applaud the UFC. They did everything they could possibly do to make the fans happy, to make everyone happy. It just didn't work out. So now you get stuck in this position where you can still deliver things, but at that point, are we maybe weakening future cards? Like, what are we going to say? We're all going to have a great night, UFC 300. But what are we going to do when 301 comes around, 302? I say spread the love, man. I think at that point, just look, the chips weren't there. You kind of move on. What scares me moving forward here with this matchup, I still think it's going to be a good matchup, but at the end of the day, my job here is to cover the sport. I'm also a fan too, but really what I want is I want to know who the best is. And I want to make sure that that question can be answered correctly, because are we going to get 100% Jamal Hill? I don't know. We interviewed Brian Butler about a month ago, right, George? And he said he was expecting International Fight Week. That was kind of the target date for Jamal Hill to come back. This is a very serious injury, right? Yeah. Now, we all know probably why he's doing this. Pay-per-view cut, a lot of money, and I get that. But I want a true representation of both these fighters at their best. That's what makes me a fan. Okay. I trust me, I love these fights where it's just rock'em sock'em robots. I get that too. But at the end of the day, I want to know who's best. And I want to know that both guys involved in that main event are going to be at 100%. I don't think Jamal Hill's an idiot. But I do think that sometimes, maybe you feel like a 90% you could still get the job done. And that's okay. I get that. But that could be a dangerous game to play. I mean, look at what Alexander Volkanovski's kind of going through right now, right? I'm sure he might have a few regrets taking that second fight against Islam Makhachev. So I don't know, man. I just want the best two fighters on a night and have them perform and tell us who the best is. And I don't know that we're going to get that here. So I think if it were my decision, I think I would have just said, look, we tried. This is what we got. It's still a phenomenal card, and maybe left a little bit for some of them other cards coming up.
I think that DDP Izzy would have been the only one that ticked all the boxes, because if you did Jones and Miocic, they're past their prime. If you did Connor and Chandler at 185, why them? Why Connor? I mean, I hear it all the time when we're talking about Connor. His ship sailed, and this matchup, are they rushing Hill too soon? I don't know. I'd say the announcement was a letdown, but I think the fight is outstanding, and I think as we get closer, we're going to just realize it. But I think it's more about the announcement, right?
Yeah, I think a little bit.
Listen, when Dana said he was going to announce it at the post-fight presser, we were all kind of like preparing for the worst, right? Because it wasn't like going to be a surprise announcement during the broadcast. It was like, hey, I'm going to announce it, at this thing. But then he ended up just doing it on Instagram, which is, please stop doing that. Actually doing it in an official capacity would be better. In my opinion.
It was kind of weird, right? Like, you're already there. Why not just do it 10 minutes before, like, to end the broadcast on pay-per-view or something, or at the press conference? I did think that was a bizarre choice by them.
It does kind of say a lot, though, right? To me, what that says is I don't want the fans to boo, to give a bad reaction. That's what it said to me.
But you also have Joe Rogan there to talk it up, John Anik to talk it up. I don't know. I feel like anytime you can deliver it on a broadcast, it's golden. And for them to do it not at the press conference, but yet on Instagram, it just almost seemed like even he wasn't fired up about it.
It's weird.
Yeah. All right. In the chat, I'll answer this because he was with us for many years, but John Morgan is no longer with MMA Junkie, so that's why he's not hosting. He did an excellent job here as the host of Spinning Back Clique, but he has moved on. Still our bud, though. He was there with Mike on Press Row at UFC 298. Here's one for you, Mike, from Josh Wallace. How do y'all handle Dana's blunt replies to y'all's questions? I think that's a good question. How do you? I mean, has he ever done that to you, or or in the last run of questions? What's the feeling there amongst all the reporters?
I mean, I think a lot of people are used to it at this point. You kind of see how Dana rolls, especially like these days. He'll come in and he'll answer the questions a little more sincerely from the people he recognizes. But once it gets like 10, 15 minutes into those 30-minute post-fight scrums, he kind of starts playing with the media a little bit more, firing back, doing some poking. We saw, he had something with Matt Wells not that long ago in Austin, I believe. So
right.
It just depends, like kind of on his mood, how he's taken the questions, how they're set up. He has this thing now where he kind of likes to pick one word that's said within a question and really like tug on that string and use it to either like manipulate your question to him or his answer. But I mean, Dana's Dana at this point. Like, he's going to go out there, and you saw the exchange he had with our editor Simon Simano in regard to Conor McGregor at that press conference, and he's going to answer the questions the way he wants to, really, no matter how you frame them or however it may be, however you want to rebuff them or ask follow-ups and stuff. So it can be tricky. I mean, people like to criticize, but when you're sitting in that room, there's a lot of people in there. Dana's looking you right in the eye and has that demeanor that he has sometimes. It's always not as easy as it looks, but I think people do the best job they can. So it's not always perfect. We can always do better and try to pry more out of him. But I guess that's kind of it.
Yeah, you guys should check out Greg Popovich and the way he dismisses questions, the coach for the San Antonio Spurs. Dana still got a way to go to get to that guy. Mo Beck in the chat says, main and co-main for 300 are pretty underwhelming, sort of weird. Will be great, fun card, but lacking the stakes and drama we were all hoping for. I think that's pretty finely worded there. It's a little underwhelming because of what we were expecting, but it doesn't mean the fights are going to suck. Anthony Walker says they definitely put that one together in the Honda Center bathroom before the main card started, signed the contract against the stall door. That's kind of the feeling, yes, of how we took it. Mo Fresh says, I'd like transparency. Someone please explain why Bilal isn't getting his title shot. It's not a topic here, but I think it's valid, guys, because it was tied into a possible 300. I'll go back to you, Mike Bond. Did you hear anything about this and why that? I thought that was, in other words, plan D, E, or F. Like, if we can't do anything, fine, we'll give him Leon and Bilal. But even that didn't happen, and there's even rumors that Bilal might not have been one of the three who would have been considered. Yeah,
I think Leon versus Bilal was like plan Z. Like, that was like literally the last resort, the last possible option for them. They know that the fans didn't want that fight. I mean, Bilal Muhammad is a deserving contender. He deserves a shot, but you couldn't put him in the main event of UFC 300. The backlash would have been absurd. The fans would have been very pissed off. So they ultimately chose to pull the plug on that. You can say that's right or wrong, but it is what it is. Bilal Muhammad is very polarizing, and that's why they went to seemingly Khamzat Chimaev, maybe Shavkat. Like, I don't know exactly who all three of those options were. The way Dana said it at first, where he's like, we offered him the first one, which I felt like was Bilal, but maybe for like a co-main event. And he said yes, and they were like, it didn't really work for us. But then I believe the Schmo reported that Bilal wasn't one of the three considered at all. So I don't really know exactly what direction they went to. I feel bad for the guy, but I do think now that this has seemingly kind of passed, we probably get him on UFC 302, UFC 303, whatever this rumored event is in the UK over the summer. I think we do get Bilal versus Leon probably as the co-main for that card, and Tom Aspinall defending his interim title in the main event. So it's going to work out fine in the end. It's just, like this, that was never truly an option for this card, in my opinion, unless it would have been like the second or third title fight on the card. Then it would have been a little more palatable for the fans.
The listeners are blowing up the chat. There's some good ones in here, so I'll read a few more and then we got to move on. Caleb. So listen, most of these are coming in through YouTube, but if you're watching on Facebook, I can see you. Caleb Valdez Torres says, love me some SBC, Junkie Nation. Josh Wallace says, I mean, who cares about 300 being this card that is better than any card ever made? This year will be filled with amazing cards. That's true. We should be happy that these cards have been pretty great. Maybe Toronto lacked a little bit, but these next two are pretty stacked. Oatmeal 26 says 299 is greater than 300. Now you see what you did there. You went overboard. Oatmeal 26 went a little bit too much. 299 is jacked pretty good, but 300, man, you can't argue with it once you just get over the fact that the announcement was a letdown. But we got to move on. Ilia Topuria defeated Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 298. Big right hand did most of the job with some follow-up strikes before the referee stepped in. And now we have a new champion. That's right. The longest running champion is out. Volkanovski was champion for over 1,500 days and some change. That's 4 years and some change, by the way. It's a long time. Great run, Volk. Let's talk about the new champ. He's 15-0 overall, 7-0 in the UFC. 13 of his 15 wins are finishes. On the road to the top, he submitted a top grappler in Bryce Mitchell. He also held his own against Josh Emmett, and you saw what he did. And by that, I mean on the feet, and you saw what he did on Saturday to the great Alexander Volkanovski. He's only 27 years old, guys. What's the future look like for the Matador? Can he do what Aldo and Volk did and hang on to that strap for a few years? Matt, how about you? What do you think?
I think it's possible that he does go on this incredible run with the title, but it's going to depend on who he gets matched up with, especially like right out of the gate. Kind of like how Volk was saying during his post-fight interview when he went to the back, he doesn't expect Ilia to want to turn around as quickly as he would have liked. So that leaves the door like kind of wide open for, what's going to happen with his matchup to defend his title first, if that ends up being the case. Let's say like, if Max Holloway, beats Justin Gaethje and then he decides, I'm going to go back down and try to fight for my title again. I think that's an incredible stylistic matchup that, would be hard to pick a winner on. So if something like that happens, or if he gets the Volk rematch, it's kind of hard to say how his title run would start. But if he gets matched up with, another prospect, another up and comer in the rankings, like a Mozart Evelev or somebody like that, then you could say, yeah, he's gonna stack some wins right out of the gate. But it all comes down to matchmaking. I will say this though, for Ilia right now, especially in this fight against Volk, he looks like he's got that championship aura about him, right? The way he was just kind of out there, very calm in the pocket, just slowly stalking Volk around the cage, waiting for his moment. It was a very poised performance that we saw out of him that looks like, a real championship caliber talent. So it's all going to come down to the matchmaking, but he is definitely somebody that's capable of holding on to that belt for a while. Just depends on, how the UFC, wants to roll it.
Mm-hmm. All right. What are your thoughts, Goes? Like I say, only 27 years of age and pretty solid, man. Those 13, like, he's got like 8 KOs, 5 finishes. So he seems to get down everywhere.
Yeah, I think he's poised to do something pretty great. We all grew up on combat sports and boxing, right? A lot of undefeated guys make it to their title shot. You'll see 25-0, 30-0. That doesn't always happen in mixed martial arts, right? So when you do have a guy with that O next to their name, it means a lot. It's a really big selling point for that fighter. And I think the UFC can really use that to their advantage. The countries that he's aligned with, passionate fans, right? And he could be leading a movement into those countries' new territories that the UFC haven't been in. I think the future looks really, really bright for him. I just don't know how the fans are going to really react to this guy. He fought Volkanovski, and it's kind of hard to not be the heel against him, but he kind of embraced that heel a little bit. And I'm wondering if he did too much damage there. I don't know if the fans are going to gravitate back to him. I know they will in Spain. I know they will in Georgia, but I don't know what happens when he comes back to Vegas or what. But he is kind of a likable guy when you get him to chill out a little bit. I think he says good things. As far as the run itself goes, like if you look at the people that are left in that division, these are guys that they're great fighters, and all of them have shots, obviously. But those fighters have seen better days. The one that I think really stands out is just if he fights Volkanovski again, right? What happens there? But for the most part, I think the blueprint is there, and I think the odds are in his favor to go on a pretty good run.
What do you think, Mike? There's some killers at featherweight, starting with Max himself, who I know is already scheduled to dance with the current BMF Justin Gaethje. But man, there's some killers at 145. Can he go on this type of a run like Volk and Aldo?
Ooh, if I had to pick right now, I would say no, and that's not because at specific to Ilia Topuria. It just feels like a sport as a whole thing right now. I mean, as we alluded to earlier, like Leon Edwards is now our longest reigning champion, and he's only had the belt about 15 months or something like that, maybe a little longer. But yeah, like the title turnover is outrageous right now. So to predict anyone to go on like a 5, 6, 7 defense run, part of me feels like those days are almost kind of over. I mean, you'll have the rare fighter who will come along, and maybe Ilia Topuria is that special, but I'm not fully sure yet. I mean, of course, everyone will say things in hindsight. They'll talk about the quick turnaround for Volkanovski, the 35 and over curse. Like, I did pick Volkanovski to win this fight, but now that you look back on it, it does feel like there was a lot trending in the direction of him losing this one. And for Topuria, like he did beat Josh Emmett, but we haven't seen him fight a ton of elite featherweights at this point. Maybe this was just a great stylistic matchup for him, all those kind of things. I would be curious to see a Max Holloway fight, how that would go. But how is Max Holloway going to be, physically after a fight with Justin Gaethje that could take something away from him that he might not ever get back? And then, he comes back down and maybe he's a little bit easier pickings for Ilia Topuria at this point. So it does feel like, everything outside of that is there for him. He's got, the undefeated record, the support of the countries that Goes alluded to, the confidence, the brashness, a very fan-friendly fighting style. So like it's all there. It's just a question of, can he continue to deliver the performances inside the cage? And if he keeps winning, yeah, he can definitely be one of the big stars in MMA, but the keeps winning is the most difficult and important part of all this. And he's got some tough fights ahead. So I'm excited to see what this reign looks like. Having an undefeated champion. He's only the 11th male undefeated champion in UFC history, I think 14th overall, including the females. So we don't see this very often. And as we see him fight the more difficult competition, the other top 5 names in this weight class, we'll have a little more answers. So I'm going to sit on this one for a little bit to see how it goes. But yeah, if you made me bet right now, I just don't think I'm putting big odds on anyone going on a long title reign at this point in the UFC.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let me go back to Matt here. What about Alex the Great? Okay, so there's a lot here. He has been active. He has been a company man. Usually we say someone that's defended 5 times deserves an immediate rematch. However, obviously he's had a few KOs as of late. I don't want to just assume that the concussions came with him. Usually they do, but I didn't, I'm not the doctor that's overseeing all that. And at the same time, we always talk about looking out for the fighter. Now he says that he gets anxious when he doesn't have anything booked. He even says, I started drinking a little bit before the last one. I don't know how serious that was. So there's a lot here, man. So what would you do with a guy like Alex Volkanovski? Do you reshuffle the deck, freshen everything up? I even said a few minutes ago that Holloway, who's kind of been a solid number 2 for years, he's already booked. What do we do here?
I tell him to take a seat and take a break, hit that reset button, and then, get ready for another run. But to come back quickly, like he is kind of already talking like he wants to do, like, no, that's going to be the worst case scenario for me, in my opinion. I mean, he's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. And yeah, 2 of those are up at lightweight against the same person, but the results are the results. And, it's kind of weird for his situation when it's like, okay, you deserve an immediate rematch because of what you've done at this weight class, but you've also lost 3 of your last 4 fights. So it's a weird situation. I would like to see him just kind of take a break, relax, enjoy life for a little bit outside of camp. Try to find something that is going to relax your mind aside from getting in the cage and scrapping with another, one of the best fighters in the world. I think just take a little time away, not necessarily a full year, but maybe a half year at least. Take a break and then get ready to go on another run, because I think his talent is still there, obviously. My question is, has that button been pressed though? Like, we see fighters talk about that from time to time. Like once that button is pressed, like it's easier to hit it again and again and again. So I don't want to see that happen to him. He's an incredible talent, man. And I think that he's still got a lot left in the tank, but just don't rush things.
Matt, if he takes time away, does he still walk into an instant rematch or, into a title fight versus whoever's champ?
It depends. It depends. Like if he does take time away, and Ilya's booking fights and has title defenses already, I don't know. It'd be kind of hard to see. It depends on the landscape at that point for me.
All right, that's fair. Goes. What do we do with the former champ?
I think he's got to take some rest, man. He's got to take a seat. Look, this is serious. 2 straight knockouts like that. And I know a lot of people, and even himself, kind of point to that punch probably would have put out a lot of people. And that's true. It probably would have. But we have seen him take punches like that and respond. But when it comes off another KO, it's just a little different, man. Your brain just has to have some rest. And, the pace that he's had, the wear and tear that he's had, it's not a bad thing. Just go back, relax a little bit, because I actually do believe that even if he does take a break, when he says he's ready to go, because of how popular he is, because of all the favors that he's done, I think maybe he could get that shot. Let things play out. Let everybody else have some fun for a little bit and just get that needed rest.
Mike, same thing? Unanimous? Give the guy some rest, maybe end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the play, of course. I mean, what else would the move be? Like, I don't think Ilia Topuria, he's going to want to go on his championship tour. He's going to want to enjoy this moment, which Volk, basically alluded to. And it depends, like, if they can get this Spain event done in, July, I'm sure they'll go, and then they'll have to figure out the opponent for Topuria. And in that case, I'd be super uncomfortable. But if this isn't till October, November, something like that, I would be fine with Volk taking that fight then. And yeah, I do feel he deserves the rematch. Like he's done enough. We've seen rematches happen for far less than this. What he's done in this division, it's just obviously a weird time. I can't think of too many instances where someone has got a title shot off back-to-back knockout losses. We've had a few people who've got title shots off losses, off 2 losses, but this would be a unique instance. But Volk likes to, play this game at the highest level and roll the dice, right? Like, I'm sure if he's going to lose again, he would rather it be to Ilia Topuria again in a title fight rather than, him fighting Movsar Evloev or something, getting grinded out and losing like a decision or something. So he wants to play this game at the highest stakes. That makes sense to me. It's very concerning for all the reasons these guys laid out, but he's going to have to come back and fight at some point. But like, all the things are trending against him, right? He's going to be older. That 35 and older curse isn't going to be going away. Topuria, if you thought he was confident going into this first fight, imagine how confident he's going to be going into a rematch. So like, this is the definition of an uphill climb for Volkanovski. But when they're going to book that next title fight, if it makes sense in a realistic timeline, that's the one you got to do. That's the biggest fight, in my opinion. If Yair Rodriguez goes out there and does something absurd this weekend against Brian Ortega and gets on that mic, like those two, him and Topuria have some genuine heat. You could make an argument that would be a bigger fight for Spain, considering like they, both speak the language. You throw them on some Spanish TV program, getting them talking crazy trash about something like that could be a big deal and a big way to sell this fight. But in terms of like merit, all that stuff would make sense. I think it's got to be Volk. He deserves his rematch. And if it goes badly for him again, so be it. But I think he'll be able to live with that at least.
Great stuff, guys. All right, audience, as you can see, man, great show. You can count on it every Monday. And we're only halfway through. You still got time to retweet, share this with your friends. You can see it on Facebook or YouTube. Send them to the site. They can just hit the links there. Again, every Monday, 60-minute show live. I'm going to take some questions and comments in just a second. So I'm letting you know that because you can participate. Look at the killers here. Mike Bond was there, cage side. Goes, of course, he's been covering the sport for a long time. I think if you add up the experience between the three, there's like at least 40 years of knowledge of covering MMA. So share this show, please. Hit the like button. We're going to continue here. Bobby Knuckles, man, he must have drank some of that secret juice before the fight. He got the better of Paulo Costa after surviving a massive kick to the dome at the end of round 1. Props to the former champion. He's now back in the win column. And you can't say he doesn't deserve, you can't say he doesn't have a formidable resume himself, I should say. But check it out. DDP has multiple title considerations floating out there. He's got heat with the former champ, Israel Adesanya. He's got an active and popular former champ in Sean Strickland. He's always ready. And Jared Cannonier, he's climbed himself back towards the top with some formidable wins. What do you do with the former champion, Robert Whittaker, in his next fight? Or did he do enough to warrant consideration of a title shot? Goes.
Well, there's a lot of room to have fun here for Robert Whittaker. I think going into that fight, there were a lot of questions that needed to be answered, right? But the losses to Israel Adesanya, we understand that. The guy's top notch. The one to DDP was the one that kind of shook us all up, right? Because it was so out of character for him to be dominated like that. So I think we needed to figure out, was that an isolated incident? Was it the beginning of a decline for Robert Whittaker? I don't know. This performance to me kind of says that maybe he did have an off night against DDP. And that's nothing against DDP. At the same time, I'm not going to say he beats DDP 9 out of 10 times the way he did. I think that's silly. That's hard to say for just about anyone, no? What his performance did tell us is that he still belongs to be at the top. That was a great fight. The hunger, the passion in him has kind of been awoken. Like the things he was talking about, the way he was talking is a lot different than what the kind of chill Robert Whittaker that we've got in the last couple of years. Moving forward, I think for me, what makes the most sense is probably Sean Strickland. I think that would be a good fight. I think it gives an opportunity. As a UFC fan, every time a pay-per-view is announced, we're almost kind of sitting back going, all right, what rematch are we about to watch, right? Lots of rematches. This would kind of give an opportunity to get a fresh matchup at the top. Israel Adesanya and DDP, match them up. And then maybe if DDP wins that one, he can come back and look for another rematch. Maybe Whittaker, but I think Whittaker might have to take one more. But I do think that he did grow a lot with this fight. I think he proved a lot of things, not just to the fans, but to himself.
Mike, you're next. Did you see a lot of what Goes is saying, just a different Robert Whittaker, maybe a more professional Robert Whittaker versus the laid-back gamer guy?
I mean, this largely felt like the same Robert Whittaker to me. Credit to him for recovering from that kick and doing his thing. But yeah, like maybe he had a little more zest on, some of his attacks, as he kind of alluded to pre-fight, that he really wanted to go there and get his first finish since, I believe, April 2017. Didn't happen, but that's more of Paulo Costa also being incredibly durable along with Whittaker himself. So I thought it was like a good win, a good performance. He needed this. When you're kind of in a position like his, winning in itself is more important than the style and manner in which you win. He just needed to get that bounce back. And yeah, he's always going to be a contender. I mean, I think right now, if you're talking about like who is Dricus going to fight next, I think he's probably like third or maybe even fourth option at this point. But something happens, they need a main event for an Australia card and need to put a title fight in there. Maybe he gets the call, or they have struggles negotiating with, someone else, and he could be there. Like, he's always going to be in a good position. So this was an important win for him in that sense. I don't know if it convinces my mind that the Dricus fight was like some sort of anomaly, or that he even wins a rematch. I do think the more we see, especially of Dricus, that's like kind of a bad style matchup for Whittaker. So yeah, like he's in a good spot. He'll always be there. Get another win, fight someone like Sean Strickland, maybe Brendan Allen if he beats Marvin Vettori coming up here in a few weeks. There's still fights that exist for him, and as long as he keeps doing his thing, he'll be in a good spot and he'll get good opportunities. He said at his post-fight press conference he's been very happy with the type of matchups the UFC has historically given him, the opportunities they've given him. I don't see that changing going forward.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matt, I'm gonna give you two. Whittaker, title shot next. Probably not. It doesn't sound like. What do you do with him? And then transition into Costa. What do we do with him? He had a decent showing himself.
Yeah, for Whittaker, I don't think it's a title shot. I think a fight against Sean Strickland makes the most sense. Just two guys at the top of the division. Strickland coming off the title loss, Whittaker former champ. It just makes sense. It's a fresh matchup for me. Costa, on the other hand, I mean, Jesus, the guy is so durable. He's always going to come out there and try to bang with anybody. I think a matchup against Brendan Allen would be great, because Brendan Allen still needs that win over somebody. Yeah, he's got the fight against, Vettori coming up, but Vettori's kind of been that guy that's been around the middle of the division for quite some time now. But I think you fight somebody like, you get a win over Vettori and then you fight Costa, then you're really solidified among the elites in that division. So I think Brendan Allen versus Costa would be a good matchup. One that would be incredibly entertaining. And it would be one that would also present Costa with some different stylistic matchups in terms of the grappling and stuff like that. So that's something we haven't seen out of him in a while. I mean, yeah, we kind of saw him on the ground with Luke Rockhold, but I think it would be a different style fight. With this one, with Whittaker that we just saw, was there even a clinch at all through that fight? I don't think we saw one clinch, certainly wasn't a takedown attempt. It was a fierce striking battle from the beginning to end. I'm surprised that there wasn't a finish in that fight, because those dudes were hitting, they were cracking for the whole 15 minutes. It was crazy. But I like Paulo Costa versus Brendan Allen.
Yeah, and Josh Wallace agrees with you. Costa versus Allen is great, he says. Cayman Ryder says, I didn't think Costa looked bad. I didn't think so either. But Whittaker really just came after him.
What about Costa versus Hamzat for the Saudi Arabia main event?
There you go.
Someone that would
Those
make
two,
sense
another
too.
paired up. They've been paired up a few times, so I definitely wouldn't mind seeing that one. Sky V's and El Daddy says Costa has definitely improved. Good kick game. Joseph Boza, though, says Costa should just go up to 205 pounds. Mike, what was it like from the time that he kicked them, wobbled them, the round ended, and you know how the fans go nuts in between as they're walking back to the corner? Was that a pretty loud arena at that time?
Yeah, definitely. They were big on that moment. I mean, I'm sure they thought maybe they were getting a spectacular highlight reel finish, and it was crazy too because as Costa entered the cage first because he walked out first, and while Whittaker was walking out, he was practicing that wheel kick against like the fence wall, and then he goes out there and lands it right at the end of the first round. If he'd got the finish there, that would have been pretty remarkable. But yeah, I don't think he lost a lot of stock in this one for him. Like, I don't know how many people are out here thinking Paulo Costa is going to be UFC middleweight champion anyways. He's just like a fun, entertaining, unique personality who's also like up there in terms of being one of the better ones, but hasn't really proven himself to be, that championship caliber. I mean, the guy, all respect to him, doesn't even have a win against a current UFC fighter right now in his resume. So like there is some flaw there, but he's clearly got a passionate fan base. He gets a reaction out of people. So he is a benefit to this division and to the UFC and stuff. And there's still some exciting fights for him going forward. I don't think this drops the stock significantly in any way, really.
Mike Conlon in the chat says Whittaker ate that spinning heel. He still has a chin. Nutmeg Riot says that was the best Costa ever looked, in his opinion. James Staley says Costa whoops Hamzat, but then he tells us later on, I can't stand Hamzat. All right. Bring the passion, guys. Comments, questions. The better they are, the more likely they are to be included. We have to move on, though. Let's talk about the machine. Merab Dvalishvili might have made the biggest overall splash this past week. I'm talking about from like Monday to Saturday night. This guy was all over embedded. The fans were digging it. Topuria took home the gold, so he had the biggest overall splash, right? His life completely changed. But Merab, man, he's getting huge cheers. He's got the country that supports him, Georgia, where he's from. America's taking him in. I think he's got a home in New York and in Las Vegas. He certainly has fans in the United States. But the Mexicans even popped for the guy. Cejudo's Mexican-American, but yet they were all over Dvalishvili. His streak's now at 10, by the way. And he's beaten that former champ Cejudo. Says he can even be the backup in Miami on March 9th. Can you think of any reason why he's not next? The UFC be the UFC from time to time. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me that question, is there any reason why he wouldn't be next or they wouldn't want to give him that shot? It's maybe just because they want to, if Sean O'Malley wins at UFC 299, maybe they just want to milk some more out of his title reign by giving him what would be the worst stylistic matchup entirely possible for him in the bantamweight division in Merab. So that's the only thing I could really see. But as valuable as Sean O'Malley is to the UFC as champion, there's value in Merab as well. Like, I think if things continue to trend this direction, we could see an event in Georgia at some point, and he would obviously be kind of leading the charge there. You got Topuria, Giga Chikadze, things like that. So he's got his value as well. He's got a personality. I mean, people seem to forget that Merab didn't fight since March of last year coming into this one. He had the long layoff, had the hand injury, and what a great job he's done of keeping himself in headlines, keeping himself relevant all through that time off. It didn't feel like we haven't seen him in nearly a year coming in, and then he goes in there and does what he did to Henry Cejudo, taking him down 5 times, carrying him across the cage, talking to Zuck cage side. Like, this guy knows what he's doing in terms of selling a fight and making himself interesting. So he's checked that box. And then when he goes in the cage, I mean, have you seen a more relentless fighter? Like, his cardio is absolutely insane. You might be able to clip him and finish him in the first round. That seems like your best bet, but God forbid you have to go into that second, third, fourth, fifth rounds with him. It doesn't seem like there's really anyone out there who's able to keep up with the pace and the output that he has. So he's a problem for anyone. He's got to deserve or get the shot 10 wins in a row in the UFC, 9 straight at bantamweight. There is a very small portion of fighters in UFC history, maybe just 1 or 2, can't remember the names off the top of my head, who've had a 10-fight streak and haven't either got an undisputed title shot or at minimum an interim title fight. So all the precedent is there. The 3 wins he's had in a row right now, just absolutely spectacular. I mean, not many people. He's like doing all the hard work at bantamweight right now, and then I think he deserves a shot. So we'll see how this plays out. I don't care if Sean O'Malley versus Cheeto Vera is the most controversial decision, robbery, poor stoppage, whatever you want to call it. Merab needs to be fighting whoever the belt holder is coming out of that fight, no matter how it goes. So it's time for him to get a shot, and I hope we get it sooner than later.
Matt Wells, what are your thoughts here? I don't disagree with Mike Vaughn at all. He's spot on. But the UFC just trips us out. Bilal Muhammad also has an impressive streak, and he's not even allegedly one of the 3 names that were tossed Leon Edwards' way. Sean O'Malley did talk himself. He talked the UFC into having Vera being an opponent because he had some heat and maybe carries a little weight. Who knows? If this thing goes 1-1, I don't know, man. Back in Ecuador, would that be big? In Vegas, would it be big? I don't want the machine to get screwed either. But what do you think? Is it his?
It has to be his. It has to be his. He's undeniable at this point for a title shot. The man has beaten 3 former champions in a row. He carried a former 2-division champ around the cage like he was a sack of potatoes and was laughing at people cage side. He had Zuck's wife fist pumping. Last time we saw her cage side, she was fearing for her life and what was happening. Like, the dude has done some amazing things, and he's also in the same process. He's made you forget that he doesn't finish fights. He has 1 finish in 10 wins in the UFC.
Holy cow!
You say that about anybody else, you'd be like, oh, he's the decision machine. Like, no, he's so entertaining that you completely forget about that because he goes out there and makes it fun. He makes it entertaining. The guy's undeniable at this point. I don't care what happens between Sean and Cheeto. They're gonna have to run their trilogy another point if Cheeto wins that fight. Merab has done way too much. He's sat on the sidelines, really. If Aljo wasn't there, he probably would have had his title shot. Who knows? But Merab has done incredible things inside that octagon, man, and it would be a crime. It would be a little crime if he does not get a title shot for his next fight.
He has done a lot of incredible things inside the octagon, including stealing the champ's jacket and then wearing it and sitting on top. I still remember that stunt. El Gato Loco says, what about Corey Sandhagen goes? So answer that, and toss that in. Could Corey Sandhagen run interference on Merab?
I mean, look, I think anything is possible. The UFC does make brash decisions, but is it the right thing to do? I don't think so, man. I think it's just very clear cut. This should be Merab's shot. But there are things that happen. There are injuries. And, these 2 guys said a close fight in the Cheeto Vera fight. You just never know with the UFC, man. They're so weird. And I want to kind of figure out, I feel like Merab has turned a corner a little bit with Dana White because, his stance of not wanting to fight Aljamain Sterling is not one that the UFC really appreciates. And usually they hold on to those things. But I think Merab has just been so charismatic and just such a good fighter that I think maybe he's been able to get out of those murky waters a little bit with the UFC. But you just look at like some of the guys they brought up, like Bilal Muhammad, right? He's in no man's land. Beneil Dariush tried to play this game and it took him forever. He never got his shot. With Merab Dvalishvili, though, I just feel like we have something different. I think it would be an absolute tragedy if we missed out on him being able to fight for that shot. And I do feel, I think I saw it in the chat, somebody said like, he could be even bigger. And I do agree with that. I think he could grow to be a very big superstar for the UFC if they just put a little bit behind them. And I'll tell you guys something. No matter who is in that fight against Merab Dvalishvili, I think I'd probably take him. In that fight. But Corey Sandhagen, I think he'll get his shot eventually. I just don't think it'll be next.
All right, fair enough. We're running short on time, but I do have a follow-up. So this is just for Mike because he was there. He might have some inside. Let's talk about Cejudo real quick. I didn't see a Cejudo that was done. Like he won round 1, and then the other rounds, even when he got taken down, he'd find ways to pop up. Like the machine is the machine. He's tough to fight, right? Because that guy's not going to run out of cardio. this guy's got a winning mentality. He says, if I'm not fighting at the top or fighting for the title, I just want to be out. But again, I still see a top 5, top 7 bantamweight here, man. What's the update on that? And what do you think is going to happen next with Triple C?
I think he's going to retire again. He said he was 100% going to do it if he lost this fight. The performance, yeah, he did have some good moments in there, but I think 3 years ago, Henry Cejudo wins this fight against Merab. Like in this scenario, the way it played out, you get an extra 2 rounds. Like I think that's his fight, and he's like 37 years old now, and he's been through a lot. I don't know if the comments Sean O'Malley made on his broadcast about him being injured throughout camp are accurate or not. We'll have to hear from Henry, but if it is, I don't think that like affects my view of the performance. I think that just goes to show this is the guy who has 20 plus years of combat sports mileage on his body, and that isn't going to get better for him going forward if he continues to go through more camps and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like the big question is, how big of a mistake did Henry Cejudo make retiring when he did the first time around? Because it seems like for all the things he tried to gain by doing that, more leverage, bigger paydays and stuff, not a ton of that came his way. And now he's come back and is 0-2 since his return. And I think it kind of views or affects the outlook on his legacy at this point. Like, yeah, no one's ever going to be able to take away the fact that he's one of 4 simultaneous undisputed UFC champions in history. But to me, he's probably like number 4 out of 4 there in terms of like where you would rank them on the pecking order. So yeah, like he left a lot on the table here. And you saw Dana White's attitude towards him at the press conference. Like he didn't want to give him that retirement moment, but I was cage side there. Henry was waiting all through Merab's like 5-minute post-fight interview. He wanted the mic. His gloves were off. He walked past us on press row with the gloves off. And then he was going to come to the press conference. Then he wasn't, then he was, then he wasn't. Obviously didn't show up at the end of the night. So we don't know exactly where he stands. I suspect we'll see a video on his YouTube channel sometime here in short order where maybe he clarifies this. And, lucky for him, he does have that kind of analyst role carved out for himself and doing some good stuff there. But yeah, I do think this is the end. And it's unfortunate because it does feel like as great as his career was and has been, he could have done more if he didn't retire when he did.
Okay. I'm in South America, so I did not know that. I think I'm watching some ESPN Plus, but they went to the host that they had here, but I did not know he was there for all 5 minutes while they talked to Merab. I guess it's clear that that's exactly what he wanted to do. Yeah, and that's why you tune into Spinning Back Clique, because we got all the people, junkies at every show, folks. Hit the like button for us, won't you? And have you guys noticed some pretty cool B-roll that you're not going to see anywhere else? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, on Saturday, we have a solid card between PFL champs and Bellator champs, Though it did start off 4 PFL champs versus 4 Bellator champs, not in title fights, but still, the champs are going to collide, right? They're down to 2. But aside from that, there's some great fighters are going to be competing on the first major PFL card of the year down in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. There inevitably will be scoreboard on the line. But who really has the edge overall up and down the card, and which promotion will be getting their flowers from us on next week's SBC? Matt, start off.
It's going to be tough, man. I think it's going to be very close to 50-50. But if I had to give an edge, I would lean Bellator. I think, you look at guys like Johnny Eblen, Vadim Nemkov, AJ McKee even, further down the card, Aaron Pico. I think those are all the guys that are going to pick up wins, but I think this card's going to be incredibly entertaining top to bottom. I think there will be close fights. We have, Biagio Ali Walsh in his first pro fight. That's going to be interesting to see. Clarissa Shields coming back, see if she's made some improvements in her grappling game. There's a lot of little nuggets throughout the top and bottom of this card. But, when you talk about the very top, the title fights, I think the closest fight for me and for my money will be that main event between Renan Ferreira and Ryan Bader. But I still kind of want to lean Bader on that one, but we'll see how it plays out. I think it's going to be an incredible card, and I think Bellator will take it, but don't be surprised if PFL pulls off some big wins here.
Goes, how about you? Who do you lean towards?
Well, I think after the shakeups, I think that pushed me even more to the Bellator side. I don't have my broom out. I don't think it's going to be a sweep or anything like that. But if you look at it overall, like, heavyweights are kind of hard to break down because you can be on the right side of your analysis, but all it takes is one major shot, and that just changes the fight. So I think they have a very good shot there. Johnny Eblen, that guy, he was already good. He improves with every fight. So I feel like that might be another win for Bellator. You look at Ray Cooper, right? He's stepping in. That's kind of already a disadvantage. Jackson's just kind of a smart fighter. I think he's going to find a way to win that one. Bruno Vadim is kind of a coin flip. The Santos Romero fight, that one doesn't really feel like it's that big of a PFL versus Bellator, but that just comes down to who wants to show up that night, right? Sometimes we don't get the best version of those two, but the kind of like people's main event, I would say, is probably Collard and McKee. I think that one can go any way. I think it comes down to who makes the adjustments in that fight. If AJ McKee uses his wrestling, I think we could be in for another win for Bellator. But that can go any way because Clay Collard is kind of hard to break, man. And I'm really, really looking forward to that fight. But I think overall, I'm probably going to give the edge to Bellator.
Goes, are you missing a PFL glove in the back, by the way?
I have one down here. It's one of the older ones. I need a newer one.
Oh, just curious there. Okay. How about you, Mike? Is it unanimous? Bellator? No love for PFL?
I got some love for PFL, but yeah, I do think there's some trickier matchups here. It's kind of a weird card, right? Like they've lost a few of the title fights that they had originally planned. These champion versus champion fights aren't even for a title, and they're 3 rounds. So like, there's just kind of some weird vibes. We're a few days out. They just announced, the pay-per-view price is going to be $50 for this. I'm curious to see how that goes in terms of, how many people actually order that. But like, it's a good card. There's some good fights. I don't need to reiterate everything Goes said there. I think he broke down the matchups pretty well. And if you kind of had to do a count to count, I think Bellator definitely is probably going to come out of this with a bit of a leg up. And curious to see how like the PFL side, the Don Davises and stuff react to that. And just kind of where this goes from here, right? Like, where are these winners going to go into the seasons? Are they going to keep them exclusive on pay-per-view? It does feel a little messy right now to kind of kick off this PFL Bellator era. So for them, I do hope it's a smooth show, an entertaining show, and we just get some good fights because it does feel like this new era for them has been a little bit clunky. The fact that there's no, Cyborg versus Larissa Pacheco on this card does feel like a miss. Kayla Harrison would have been great if they could have kept her around. So it doesn't feel like the absolute pinnacle, especially after we've lost a few fights of what they can offer, but hopefully it's kind of a good start to this. And that's all they can really hope for at this point, because I think they've done the best they could under the circumstances.
Over here at MMA Junkie, we're right down the middle. We're objective. We don't take sides, but guys, I got to disagree. I root for the underdog. When the Pride guys came over, they thought they were going to whoop some ass. The UFC guys held their own. Strikeforce at WEC, they felt the same, and they produced champions. I'm rooting for the underdog. I think PFL is going to surprise us. They're either going to narrowly beat Bellator or things are going to be even, but it's not going to be a sweep. I think PFL is going to hold their own. That's just my prediction. Guys, we're going to blast through these because I think they're interesting and we put the work in preparing for it. So even if we go a minute overtime, let's blast through these. The countries of Spain and Georgia had some big nights with Topuria and Dvalishvili winning their respective fights. Additionally, Topuria is now an undisputed UFC champion. A month ago, South Africa had their first world champion. Knowing that are coming, which country will next make the claim of having their first UFC undisputed champion? Excluding Ecuador, because Vera's fighting next, so he's got too far of a head start. I'm not saying that he can't get it done. You guys know what I mean. Goes, you go first.
I'm going to go with Iraq and Amir Al-Bazi. I think he's a guy that I've had my eyes on for a long time. I think eventually he might be able to get it done.
All right, Mike, what do you think?
I like Shavkat Rakhmonov in Kazakhstan. I think that's probably the right move here. I think he's not far off for a title shot, 1 win, something like that. I think that's probably a solid bet in terms of that one.
And both of you guys think they can get it done in 2024, by the way? Or is it maybe early next year?
I mean, Al-Bazi's a tough one. He'd had a pretty serious neck surgery, so there's a chance he doesn't even fight again this year.
Yeah.
All right, Matt Wells, how about you?
I'm going to go with Arman Sarukian in Armenia. I think that would be a nice one for the lightweight division. Those matchups at the top, who knows how they're going to play out over the year. So I think, to answer your previous question, probably earlier next year sort of thing for him.
And if anybody's wondering what fat boy in the top left thinks, I say Manon Fiorot for France. Notice how I said undisputed, because much respect to the big man. Cyril Gane did get down, but he won the interim. Undisputed. I think Manon Fiorot, man, she's a beast. I think she can get there either end of this year or early next year. It's going to be a close one. Good one, guys. And just a quick plug for Vanderlei, the great axe murderer. He, at one point, almost seemed like he was iced out of the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose. Shout out to Simon Simano for bringing that up to Dana White. He almost got Pete Rose, and Dana White just said, you know what? I kind of forgot about it. So he's in. And guess what? He deserved to be in. And I think Pete Rose deserves to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But I just want to know from you guys, what are your guys? Did you see what Vanderlei was just doing? What are your guys' thoughts on Vanderlei Silva? No, what's your highlight of Vanderlei Silva is my question. Sorry, Good, you go first.
It's got to be them Rampage fights, man. Like nobody was doing that to Rampage at that time, you know. And for him to be able to finish him in that way, his presence and his aura is just something that I think will be unmatched.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you were supposed to go first, so Goes might have snagged yours because Rampage flying through the ropes. That one's hard to top, but he had a lot of highlights. Which other one stood for you?
Him versus Chael Sonnen in the Tough Gym was definitely no. I'm kidding. No, I mean the Rampage fights, all the Pride highlights, just unbelievable stuff. That's like, you know, some of my foundational memories of getting into the sport, things that turned me, you know, into a serious fan, and then eventually wanting to be in the media. So yeah, those are fond, nostalgic memories, and we'll never get sick of watching Wandy Pride FC highlights.
Matt Wells, this guy went 18 fights without a loss from 2000 to 2004, had like 3 title defenses, a lot of non-title fights. He mixed it up with heavyweights, future middleweights, light heavyweights, man. I mean, this guy did a lot, but which one stood out for you?
I mean, it kind of like all of them during his prime. I mean, just the way his entire aura, the way he had approached fights, just this ruthless aggression, sort of like fearless. Like, I'm going to just charge at you, swinging hooks. Like, I don't care if you clip me on the chin. I'm still coming forward. And, you know, you also got to give him credit for having everybody in the world practice this at least once or twice, you know?
Mm-hmm. And Sam Thorne, an epic walkout song, man. I hope someone brings it back with his permission. Him and Brian Stan had a great one. I think it was in Japan. But, yeah, you guys pretty much took the better one. So, great job, guys. You guys were an outstanding panel. Maybe my favorite one to date. Just don't tell the other guys I said that. And of course, we'll be back next Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll talk about all the latest big stories in mixed martial arts, and we'll obviously go over all the action from this weekend, including the PFL Bellator card that we just discussed. Don't forget to tell a friend about this. If you missed any of it, the replay will be up immediately and on the way out. If you liked what you heard, hit that like button for us. We would gladly thank you. Go out and be a champion. We'll talk to you soon.